Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's episode number 53 of the Audible Farm Podcast, and this episode is brought to you by Couchtown Coffee. Couchtown Coffee is roasted right here in Iowa, and it's the only coffee that I will drink. It's my favorite coffee. I've drank a lot of coffee in my lifetime, too, believe me. You can go to www.couchtowncoffee.com, click on the Our Coffees section, hunt around on the website, see what you like. They got tips on there on how to brew the coffee the best, as far as what is industry standards best coffee, the way that Andrew Chipman, the roaster and owner at Couchdown Coffee, would recommend. And it's great. I like the website. I like what they got going on there. They also have a Facebook page. You can go to their Facebook page and give it a like. I've got links to both of those down below. If you find some coffee you like, you can make an order. And I'll tell you what, Couchtown Coffee is so awesome that they will give you 20% off if you enter the promo code. And the promo code this week is SOUND. SOUND. The promo code will save you 20%. And not only that, this week, since Audible Farm podcast turned 1 year old, I've offered something fun for this. So the first 5 orders this week will come with a free Audible Farm podcast sticker. Andrew and I at Couchtown have hooked it up, and we've got a little plan going. So the first 5 orders this week will get an Audible Farm podcast sticker as long as you use the promo code SOUND. And why is this week's promo code SOUND? Because this week I am joined by Ben Hall, and Ben is the guy that's been put on task to record what is a tentative album coming out from Three Finger Betty. This might be the only time we've ever even publicized this a little bit. Oops. But yeah, so we're in the studio doing our best to do some recordings and seeing how it's going. And Ben's been very, very good to us as far as working in a good time frame. As far as every band goes, it's just hard to get everybody together, and then you add one more person to the mix, and it's just a little bit more chaos. So he's been really good to us, and he's a pretty well managed person as far as how he has everything set up, and he's pretty nice about it when I ask him questions about what's going on and stuff like that. So I figured, hey, let's sit down and talk about it. And then come to find out, he's a musician too, and I'm really intrigued by the way that he described his music in this podcast. We had a lot of fun sitting down talking a little bit of tech and a little bit of how he does recordings and how he got started and what his bands are as far as their schedules as playing and things like that. I will have links to everything down below. And thanks for listening, everybody. It's episode number 53 with Ben Hall.
It's the Audible Farm Podcast with your host, Peter Stockdale.
All right, sitting down with Ben Hall. Ben, you have actually been, put on task to be the man that has to record Three Finger Betty's next album.
Yeah, it's a pain in the ass. I'm just kidding.
Worst gig ever. No, the two of us have not really met that much, and we recorded an album, and we did 6 songs in the course of an afternoon and an evening. And one of the things that I feel like, I guess I never really thought too much about when it comes down to recording music was the amount of setup, I guess, that comes into play with, everything, like the amount of cables that have to be run, the amount of microphones. It's just, it's very intensive if you're going to do it as everybody in a live batch, which is how we recorded everything.
I kind of enjoy doing it that way, though, because you get this unique energy that it's harder to capture when you're recording each element individually. You know, if you're just doing the drums 2-click, then the guitar 2-click, and then the bass 2-click, if you're not careful, it can start to feel more mechanical. So I kind of enjoy the energy of a live type of a setting.
All right. So I mean that's just kind of the deal. Like so we had made a prior attempt to record an album, and we did it track by track by track by track.
Right.
Which is weird because it was the first time I'd ever done that, and it's you feel like weirdly disconnected from everybody else while they're playing their parts.
Right.
I mean, you can definitely laser everything down to the beat and make it perfect.
Mm-hmm.
but it also feels a little odd, like while you're doing it that way. Like, what's your experience with either going track by track by track, or saying everybody's going to be either recording in an isolated space or the same space all at once?
Well, I mean, it kind of depends on the project. I've done it both ways. I enjoy doing it both ways. What I found is it kind of depends on the group that I'm working with. So like you guys and the sleepover, what I was able to do was just do it live, but both bands were very well rehearsed in their stuff, and so the energy of the group dynamic was really able to come across better.
Yeah.
Whereas there's some groups I would never even, I don't even know if I would agree to record them in a live setting. And it's not that they're terrible. It's just that, there's some music that I think needs the energy of the live setting, and there's some that I think needs the precision of the separate type of recordings. But given the choice, I think I would always rather do it in a live group. One, because it's a bit quicker to do it, and two, because again, the energy of it is a bit different.
I totally agree. Like 100% where you say like the energy comes across. I was talking about this with somebody the other day, and it's kind of a parallel discussion that led us to exactly this. And the thing was that we were talking about like, do you ever practice with a metronome? And it's like, well, yeah, I mean, you got to practice with a metronome. But I also don't live and die by the metronome, because if you live and die by the metronome every time, all the time, it ends up with this weirdly manufactured sound, which is kind of what, like, if you go track by track by track, a lot of times you will record to a metronome initially, and you can always come back to that metronome click track to make sure everything is perfectly in time. And it adds, I mean, like we've talked about, it makes it perfect, but it also sometimes just saws off the live energy feel that you can have sometimes.
Definitely.
And, as far as like, I don't have a disparity. I'm not like upset when somebody like sounds different live compared to the album, because it's two completely different processes. It's like, check out this, picture I painted. Now check it out when I paint it on the fly. It's like two completely different things,
Oh, definitely.
But, like, I feel like, I mean, that's just from, like, sitting here with you and listening to a few of the tracks from Three Finger Betty. It's like, this sounds like, because I've recorded a bunch of our stuff live before, but it's always just with a portable recorder. I didn't, like, do a nice job with it like you did. So, but it's like, this sounds like all of those recordings, but, like, really good. Like, really good, So you end up with this live feel to everything still to an extent, where it's...
I blame part of the nice sound on Clint's toms. I wish every drum kit I recorded had Clint's tom sounds. They just sound amazing.
Yeah, that was something that he like sat down and did his research on and hunted down like the exact perfect drum set he wanted to buy, and he did all the proper research and got a good set, And,
oh yeah,
and kudos to him. And to be honest, kudos to him, because he actually, as far as I'm concerned, like almost any band he's in, he adds like a different dynamic with. It's not just the fact he's got like a huge drum set, but he like uses the whole thing, and he uses
it differently on different projects, and I definitely noticed that quite a bit from the Sleepovers new record, which is coming out in October.
Sweet. And shout out to the Sleepover.
Yeah, they're pretty great.
Yeah.
And as opposed to this new Three Finger Betty thing that's in progress at the moment. The energy of his performance is different on each one, but they're also kind of different types of music. Whereas, from my limited perspective and life experience, I would label the Sleepovers more like punk.
Yeah.
More like raw punk, whereas I would think of Three Finger Betty as being more like, I don't even know, punk with more of a metallic edge.
Yeah.
But not like a modern type of metal, but kind of like your like classic 80s metal type of edge.
Yeah, and that's something that's really weird is when we try to like define Three Finger Betty, like punk, like it's the easiest, most roundest thing you can say, but like the way Clint plays the drums
is not very punk.
No.
And then when John rips out a solo, it's like, that is not a punk solo at all.
Yeah, punk people don't play solos like that, and I'm only playing like little fills here and there, but there's like pinch harmonics and other shit going on.
Which, by the way, for anybody listening to this, when the Three Finger Betty album does come out, you should know that all of the solos were improvised on the fly by John. So if you're listening to a solo and you're like, oh my god, this is amazing, just remember he made that up on the spot.
Yeah, that's like my favorite part about it, is he's got like a general direction with where he goes with his solos, but it's kind of just however they come out on the fly. And it's kind of cool to like even just to play with them every single night, where you're just like, dude, he just ripped it tonight. You know, like this one's a shredder, and then like sometimes it's just like this one has a lot more surfer feel to it. You know, so it's kind of cool just to see how it comes out. Yeah, that's totally cool about that. Like where we just like ripped him on the fly. I was not involved in like the second session, I would say, of recording. I didn't do any of the background vocals, so unfortunately I won't be on the.
Just vocals. It's not a big deal.
Yeah, unfortunately I won't be on the vocals, but you can hear me live with Three Finger Betty.
You could have been there.
Yeah, I was at another show, unfortunately, doing another podcast. Oh, I'm always getting around, I guess, but yeah, so like I didn't know whether or not he was gonna sit down and re-record solos or what was gonna go on that day, other than just doing background vocals, and I guess he left them all in there. So that's going to be pretty awesome. I can't wait to hear that when everything gets polished completely. It's going to be really amazing.
I'm certainly enjoying the progress on it so far. There was one of them, I can't even remember which one. The fifth track. Was it? Nope, the third track. I keep getting the third and the fifth one backwards. But towards the end of the third track, and I'm not trying to say names of the tracks because I'm not trying to spoil it for people. But there's this cool thing that happened at the end of it where someone just slammed a door, and I was like, "Hey, do that again." And I recorded it and popped it in there. I was like, "That sounds awesome."
That's awesome. That's pretty funny. So yeah, I mean, like that's one of the things where like you would think about that, whereas if I was doing any, like I can do ludicrously basic recordings of things, like what you would call like raw demo type stuff, but I can't do anything polished like this. But like I would never think about anything like that, and that's some other things where you just like, hey, check this out. You like send me a message and be like, I did this. What do you think of this? And it's just something you whipped up in 5 minutes and like that's actually pretty awesome, you know? Like
like the intro.
Yeah. So like just stuff like that where it's like this is cool. This is cool. I dig what you got going on because you're actually part of the creative aspect and not just like. I don't know, it's a lot easier when you have extra input, especially from somebody that has the hands on the task, you know?
I feel like the creative side of it is the most fun, you know? I definitely enjoy the engineering side, the, you know, aspect of, okay, I recorded this drum, what is this drum trying to sound like and how do I make it sound like it?
Yeah.
You know, more of that kind of the precision and engineering work to it. But I really enjoy the creative aspect of, you know, when someone comes in with an acoustic and they're like, hey, I wrote this song on an acoustic and let's make a whole track out of it. And, you know, and we'll be like, well, let's toss some bass here, or like a synth here or something. And we'll just go through these libraries upon libraries of synths, you know, just trying to figure out like, well, what's a good sound to blend with this? What direction do we want to sort of like take it? You know, when you have a song and there's a multitude of directions that it can go, so you take it in one, but then you take it in another and see which one you like more. Yeah. And then you pick one and run with it, and it's a process that I really enjoy. Last year, my first clients. The Stress Fine, a folk duo out of Oskaloosa. Wonderful people, Corey and Brittany. Pretty fortunate to say that we've become friends since I moved to Iowa. And they came in with an acoustic and a cajon, and the idea was just to record a demo or something a little bit above a demo. And I was like, you know what? I think I'm hearing something here. So just piece by piece, we put together the whole track with, you know, acoustic and bass and electric and shakers and cajones and organ and other stuff that was on it, and putting some sound effects at the beginning and the end and whatnot, and playing with this and that. Like, oh, you know what? I think at this one spot here, I want to send the vocal out through a wah pedal, you know, or something. Yeah. And it was the creative aspect of turning this idea into a reality, I think, was really cool. And the fact that I was able to hear the track on the radio was really cool too. And I think that was kind of where I realized, I think this is like what I want to do, is kind of help bands and artists to, you know, kind of take their ideas and bring them to life in a way that they like, you know, not necessarily like what I like, you know, but because I mean, I'm going to be honest, I'm not going to sit down every day and listen to folk music. It's just not going to happen. Yeah. But, you know, to be able to create a folk track and kind of get my feet wet in that area, and kind of being open to those new possibilities in terms of like what sound can be, I think is really fun.
Yeah, it's like it's a really cool thing. When I think about it, like as far as being, I've only recorded with or done podcasts with a couple of different people who do recordings, and one of the things I always think is weird is like it's kind of like being an artist that gets paid on commission, and you just are kind of at the whim of what somebody else wants you to do. So you might not get to paint something you want to paint or make something you want to make, or something like that. So like as a recording, what would you even call it? Like an engineer, like a recording?
I don't even know. I'm just a
Um,
guy with some half-ass equipment who can sort of turn it into music.
Yeah, so like whatever that is, like
Right.
and somebody's just like, "Hey, I want you to record my band," and you're just like, "Cool, let's see what we can do," and it might not be something you want to listen to, but you still have to put like your 2 cents in to be like, okay, let's see what's the best way we can make this sound, and you have to listen to people. For example, like when Three Finger Betty comes in, we're starting to get everything set up, and the longest conversation you had, like before setting everything up, was with Clint about how he wanted the drums to sound. So like you took a lot of direction from like how he was trying to explain to make it sound. And you did a good job like giving everybody headphones and things like that, and being able to like here's your own volumes and everything, so you can mix it any way you want to in your own ears and get as loud as you want and stuff like like that kind of stuff. It's just making the accommodations, but being open to what he's got to say about things like that. Is there any, do you like record anybody that's just like so open-minded that it's almost hard to try to figure out what sound they want to come out of things?
Yes, for sure. But I mean, I think it can go both ways. You can have a band that comes in and they're like, we have an idea, but we have no idea what we want to do with it. So we trust you. All of our eggs are in your basket. And to me, that's kind of terrifying because it's like, okay, I really want to make sure that I'm doing your music justice and give you something that you're actually going to really love and enjoy long term, and not something that you're going to turn around in 6 months and say, I'm not actually happy with this.
Yeah.
But on the flip side, it's equally, I don't want to use the word terrifying, just more nerve wracking, when you get an artist who's like, this is specifically what we want. Because if you know how to achieve specifically like what they want, then it goes very quickly. But there's also that pressure aspect of, okay, it has to be exactly, how
Exactly,
it has to
yeah.
be. And I'm okay with both possibilities. I had a pop artist come in with just
cool.
an acoustic, and we put together a whole song, kind of the one that I told you about. And afterwards, it was kind of like, okay, so how do we think that went? 'Cause this was kind of new to both of us. And then there's, been, I guess I haven't really had a band come in that's like, this is exactly what we want. But I think Clint, with his drums and his idea of what he wants them to sound like, was the closest that I've come to it. And I'm okay with that because to me, it's not my art, so
Yeah, that's true.
like to me, it's not like I'm trying to paint something on commission, because it's like you have an idea and then you want me to paint it. To me, when a band comes in with their own material, it's like, okay, here's the painting, make it digital.
Yeah. Okay. Yep.
And so to me, it's kind of like, all right, so I really want to make sure that I'm bringing out, what you're giving me and working with you, because it's your art. And I enjoy doing that because it stretches me as an engineer too, to have these learning experiences. I think every project is a new opportunity to learn something. And if I do a project and I don't learn anything off of it, then I kind of wonder if I really put my heart into it or not.
Yeah, definitely.
So,
This is gonna sound weird, but like the older I get, the more I realize like that is pretty much like the key to life. You just realize you can learn from almost every interaction you have,
Right.
Whether or not it's business or pleasure. But then you have to like figure out, what do I got to take away from this interaction? And if you're not taking anything away, you're probably not. You probably just don't care about it, And that's it's not always a great spot to find yourself in. But let's like. How did you even get started doing recording stuff? Like, did you just start at your house recording yourself with like a little interface, or like what exactly?
See, it all starts on the day I was born. I'm just kidding. No, I got my first guitar when I was 16. Started playing, and oh God, this was back in Wisconsin when I was living at my dad's house and stuff. And I remember I had a copy of FL Studio. I think it was like 8 or something, like just old. And I made a couple of like drum beats on it and started playing to them. and just recorded something that way. And I didn't know like what I was doing. I had a Jackson Dinky, like a cheap Jackson Dinky, running into a Digitech RP80
All right.
on the rectifier type of a sound, and plugging that in directly into my computer, and just recording that way. And I didn't know like what I was doing, but it was. I guess I just always enjoyed making music. When I got into college, I was pretty active with music there, and I had recorded something in my dorm room my sophomore year of college, just a guitar idea that I had, and over the next couple of years I started to build on it and turn it into an actual track, and I thought it was really cool. And I kind of realized, okay, this is something that I kind of want to do. So I went to Music Go Round and got a pair of monitors, and not these ones. These ones are way nicer than the ones I had before. And these aren't even that nice by comparison to others. But I picked up, what did I have? I had a single Audio-Technica Pro 37 and a Rode NT1A, and that was it. And I would just record things acoustically. And kind of worked on a couple of projects here and there, just gradually kind of building up, and I really enjoyed it. The reason why I got into recording and started doing it more and buying equipment was initially, the reason why I think anyone does is, it's like, oh, I want to like write this music and record it and not have to pay someone else to.
Yeah.
And then I gradually kind of realized I suck at writing music.
Yeah.
But I'm better at recording than I'm at writing music. So I don't even know really how I got into it. I just had moved up here, and I played a show down in, I can't even remember, not Fairfield, but maybe Keosauqua.
Okay.
My buddy Curtis Oliver of Never Knows Best had a music shop down there for a bit called Ollie's Music Shop, and he had a stage in the back of the shop, and I went down and I played a set. And then Corey and Brittany of the Stress Vine were there, and that's where I met them. And I had listened to some of their demo work after that, and I was like, this is great, like this is good. And I can't remember how the conversation of recording them came up, but it kind of started to.
Mm-hmm.
And so then they came in and I recorded them. I was like, what, this sounds great. Let's actually do something with this. So I just started to record people.
Yeah. Did you ever like play any instruments growing up?
Growing up, not really. I got my first guitar again when I was 16 and just started going from there.
So you know like piano lessons or like, I
no,
play trumpet in the band or nothing
no,
like that?
I had no musical background. Actually, when I was a little kid, I wanted to play the violin because I thought it was really cool.
Yeah.
And of course, my dad was like, no, because we were poor and he couldn't afford the violin rental, which is understandable in hindsight. At the time, I was like, you're just terrible. But
yeah.
In hindsight, it's like, holy shit, violins are expensive, man.
Yeah, no kidding.
And my grandma, my grandma was wonderful. She died a few years back, but she had a piano at her house, and every time that we would go there to visit, I would always be messing around on it, and I was fascinated by the notes and the sounds and stuff. So I always had an interest in music, but I never really had the opportunity to start to like play and learn and grow with it till I got a little bit older.
Yeah, so like it was kind of your first guitar that got you like really interested in it, and
yeah,
started trying to figure out exactly what it was all about. Or
first song I ever learned how to play was a Rise Against song.
Okay, all right. Oh man, I'm trying to think of the first song I learned how to play was probably like, I think it was, if you really had to break it down, like Not Enough by Our Lady Peace was probably like one of the first songs I learned how to play. But yeah, I mean, I grew up on that punk scene, and that was pretty much what it was. Like I got a guitar gifted to me, and that's when I kind of started taking an interest in music and things like that. I took a theory class in high school and was like, yeah, I kind of figured it out. I kind of understand what's going on, but it wasn't until I was older I kind of applied it all, unfortunately.
I was more raised on like Aerosmith and Beastie Boys and stuff like that.
Nice.
Oh yeah, 12-year-old me walking to school with my Walkman CD player, blasting License to Ill. Oh yeah.
I always thought that like someone should do a cover of Sabotage. I mean, you did
Oh my
kind of a
God.
somewhat difficult song to pull off. Oh,
So I do some like solo performing. Well, quote do more like slowly starting to get back into it. Been kind of getting into some looping stuff, and I was looking up songs that I could do with that, and I really wanted to do that one. I was like, I just don't know if I can because there's all of these unique sounds in it. I'm like, I can't emulate that.
it's difficult. Like,
It's one of those songs that without the energy, it sounds like garbage.
yeah, it's tough because I sat down and like I was like, this song shouldn't be that hard. So I started looking up all the parts. I'm like, this is actually kind of difficult. You know, like
Yeah.
it's not, it's difficult in its simplicity. I think is like one of the deals with it. Did you ever see the video of them playing? I think it was on David Letterman.
Mhm.
They did that live video of that, and I was just like, "Good Lord, these guys are just killing it live too." And
Oh yeah.
I don't know how they're doing it, but
Yeah, Beastie Boys is interesting too because they're more, they're pretty like known for, like that song and everything off of License to Ill, but they actually have a couple of instrumental records that are, or at least one that's really, really good.
yeah,
And it definitely shows that they're actually really good musicians.
yeah, exactly. Like you never really think too much about the fact that like, oh, they can go out there and play that if they wanted to, you know,
Yeah.
like and they did, you know. But have you ever like what is probably the biggest production wise thing that you've done for like a band so far? Because I do want to come back to your shows because I saw you had one coming up,
Yeah.
so we're gonna have to dig around for the date on that
Well,
one. But,
let me look here. Production wise,
yeah, because like I
Okay.
mean, did you ever get anybody that's just like we want to record 147 tracks? We're gonna layer them all. You know, did you get
No,
anything that crazy yet? Or
well, as far as like requests on the production, no. As far as what I've done on production, I think, ironically, I think the song that I did the most amount of extraness on was Eulogy by the Stress Find, their single that I did last year.
okay,
They came in again with an acoustic and a cajon. Then they came back a couple weeks later, and we added more stuff to it. And they had an Ernie Ball Music Man guitar, great,
nice,
great thing.
Yep.
And it has the 2 1/4-inch outputs on it and
Yep.
the USB, and you can actually go in and change how those outputs work. And so it had a humbucker and a piezo in it.
Yep.
And we set the outputs so that one output was the piezo and the other was the humbucker, and I recorded them to separate tracks, panned them like left and right, EQ'd them to sound as close to each other as I could, and then I reamped them. And I think in total, all the tracks that I like layered together and played with and whatnot, and like reamping, doing this and that and whatnot, I think 220 tracks, and then gradually started to bounce that down and put it all together. And it turned out great in the end, considering it was my, the first track I'd ever done for someone else. I still go back and listen to it, and I'm like, damn, not bad. But it was definitely a learning experience because up until that point, I thought, oh, a song maybe 24 tracks at tops.
Yeah.
And this one just started to blow up and get, like more and more and more and more and bigger and bigger. And that kind of opened my eyes to like how in depth you can get with the production stuff, and I really enjoyed it. But as far as like requests that I've gotten, I think the most complicated thing was of Brighter Skies out of Madison, Wisconsin, when I did their live back in January. They just wanted me to blend their backing tracks in with it, and that was the most complicated request that I've gotten.
Yeah.
That's about it.
So what do you mean by like blend their backing tracks in there with it?
So they have extra backing tracks for guitars.
Oh, okay. So they play along
and
with
bass and
backing
stuff.
tracks live, and they wanted to
Right,
figure out a way to
right.
blend that into what.
Right, and so they had just emailed me all of their stems, and I was able to blend that in. So the drums were live, and the guitars were live. The bass was just a backing track. They didn't have a bass player on that show. But I was able to blend these backing tracks on the guitars and the vocal with the live stuff and kind of make it sound a bit fuller and bigger than it actually was at the show. But it turned out great.
That's awesome. Like, I mean, that's another thing. Like, so you went to like recorded them live as they were playing at a show somewhere.
Yep.
And you pulled it all straight off the board somehow.
Yeah, so it kind of depends on where I'm recording. Like, if I'm recording at like Lefties, which I haven't yet, I would love to.
Yeah.
But then because it's a digital board, I would just plug the board into my computer with a USB,
Yep.
download the driver, and set the tracks to just record right off the board into the DAW.
Yep.
Whereas at the Muse, where I usually do most of my live recordings, then I take my X-Air down there and I just take a bunch of 1/4-inch cables and just plug the direct outs off the board into the X-Air and then record it that way.
Yep.
Which is tricky because the direct outs off the board there are post fader.
Okay.
So if the fader on the board moves, then the recorded volume moves.
Yep.
So I have to be a little bit careful, to be like, okay, I'm going to let, the sound guy mix everything the way he wants it for the set. And then I'm just going to beg and plead with you not to move the faders or the EQs or anything during the set unless you absolutely have to.
Yeah. So like the concept of that is like sometimes somebody's just like, well, we need to EQ this around and fade up the guy hitting the solo because his channel for the solos ain't not any louder, but everybody still needs to hear it.
Right. And I mean, like, that's like whatever, it's kind of one. It's one of those where the more change and fluctuation to the signal that's coming into the recording is just going to make more work in post with editing.
Yep.
But I mean, challenges and obstacles and learning curves and experiences, and
so you're kind of at the whim of whatever gear is at the place you're at. Otherwise, you have to like drag your own everything there, pretty much. Which
I basically do with or will be doing with my solo stuff. But I mean, that's A-okay with me.
All right. So we touched on the fact that you do a little bit of sound work at Lefties and or Muse. But let's talk about this solo gig stuff you got going on. When I saw the picture you posted online, I was just like, "Oh, this is going to be some interesting stuff going on here."
Right.
I've attempted to pull off things in that genre with just a guitar.
Right.
It's not as difficult as it could be, but it's hard to do well. Which I'm not going to say that I did the greatest at it, but I did good.
No, I'm going to preface by saying, again, I'm better at recording than I am at writing and performing. So I think I'm compensating for my lack of ability to do everything on an acoustic by just adding more shit to the setup. But it's a lot of fun. I have a couple cajones and I always like playing them, and then I got a bongo cajon. That's really cool too.
Oh, that's neat.
Fun. Yeah, and then I got these congas. I love Craigslist and Marketplace. I'm just gonna say that.
Yeah.
So I found these. I can't remember. I think the guy was in Iowa City or something or whatever, and he had a pair of congas listed, and I looked him up and knew it was like $400 or $500 for the pair, and he had them listed for $100. So I messaged him. I was like, "Hey, will you take a trade?" And he said, "Sure." So I traded him a tote of old cable for these congas, and he was like, "The cable works, right?" I was like, "I think so. I mean, the cable should be okay. I'm not sure about the ends." But oh, hello, cat. There's a cat in the room now.
Hello, cat.
But I was able to trade the cable for the congas and add that to my setup too.
That's pretty awesome.
And that was kind of where I got the idea to do the the looping stuff and the live stuff was kind of this thought process of, well, I have all of this stuff. I kind of want to use it and not just have it sit here and take up space. And so I have, the cajon, the bongo cajon, the congas, a guitar, an electric, and an acoustic, and then my keyboard. And I kind of use all of that with my interface and my DAW and stuff to just layer things up together, and it all goes into. So some people have this fancy like Boss Loop Station thing. I'm poor, so I don't. So I just have a ditto looper. So
yep. Oh yeah, that's what I used, man.
Yep. And so the challenge is to set all of the levels before it goes into the looper
Mm-hmm.
and then just loop it that way and just hope I don't like mess up on the fly or something. Cause
Yeah.
oh man,
So do you have the mini Ditto looper?
I do have the mini Ditto
So it's
looper.
just the one level.
Just
and
the one.
So have you ever? Okay, so here's what you got to get everything set to some sort of unity, so everything goes into this
Right.
thing at the same level.
Yep.
And then just pray and hope that the thing doesn't mess up.
Well,
You can
and that's
dink with
kind
it
of
a little on the
right.
fly, but it's still.
And that's kind of like what I do is so I have my laptop to control the keyboard because it's just MIDI. And I also use it to do the effects processing on the vocals and acoustic and electric. And then I have my X-Air, which is, a digital mixer, so I'm able to use that to do the mixing on, everything else, the cajones and the congas and the shakers and stuff like that. And kind of have it all preset going into the looper so that all I have to do is just hit the loop. And then I've done some test recordings off the looper to see like how it sounds and whatnot, and kind of trying to tweak it and get it good. What I'm curious is how it's going to translate in a room. And through a PA, because I know how it sounds in my headphones, but it might sound a bit.
Yeah, it might sound different once it hits
Right.
like another mixing board and then live sound somewhere.
Right.
Especially when you're not going to be the one at the knobs up in the booth twisting everything.
Well,
the whole
and you
time.
see, that's the way I set my stuff up the way I do, is it's self-contained, so all I'm going to have to do is send a left and right to the house, and then they just boost it.
All right.
So the hope and prayer is that, it'll, the way I have it mixed going in my headphones is going to sound good coming out of that PA.
Cool.
But it's a learning curve and experience. It's not really something that I'm like, oh, this needs to be perfect or whatever. It's just, I don't know. I spend so much time kind of mixing music and not as much performing. So it's kind of a different type of outlet, just something to break up.
Yeah. You have performed though before.
Oh, yeah.
You do perform.
Yep. I play with Aren't We All?
Okay.
Mark Bowles, Mike Farrell, Josh Tapkin, a.k.a. Jorge Pacelli. I don't know how he got the nickname Jorge Pacelli, but that's him. Mark Bowles, phenomenal drummer. He's been drumming for 40-plus years. And Mikey, he's great at singing. We call him our little Maynard.
Yeah.
But Mark just had another surgery, so he's going to be out for a few more months till he's able to play drums again. So it's,
Do you guys have like a Facebook, or like where do you play shows
we
at?
do. We do have a Facebook. I don't even know what the Facebook is, but if you look up Aren't We All on Facebook, I'm sure you'll find it.
Yeah. What kind of music would you call it? Or what is it? Because I've not to be like, but I've never heard of it.
It's very Tool inspired.
Oh, sweet.
So
That's awesome.
now I say inspired because I am not Adam Jones.
Oh yeah, I mean, I'm not Adam Jones either, but that's awesome though. That's really cool.
Tool inspired, aka the Danny Carey band.
Okay, all right, I could go for that.
We always joke and laugh that Adam Jones and Maynard James Keenan are just kind of backing artists to Danny Carey's drum solos.
Yeah. Dude, his drum stuff is insane. Like the deeper you look into what he's got going on with his drum set, the crazier it gets. The way
It's
he's
wonderful
into,
though.
Geometric patterns and stuff like that.
Aren't We All Band on Facebook
All
is
right.
what we are.
So, do you guys, how many shows a year do you guys usually play, or like where do you play? And...
Well, we didn't play any shows last year. We played a couple in 2017. No, I take it back. We did play a couple last year. But, I mean, we don't tend to play out much. We don't want to, oversaturate ourselves.
Yeah.
You have those bands that are playing every other week. And
Yeah. Been through that.
But, I mean, I've been with them for 2.5 years now.
Oh, nice.
But as far as, them themselves, they've been around for, I don't know, a long time. The band, through its name changes and member changes, has probably been around for over 20 years.
All right.
So they play it all over, House of Bricks back when it was there.
Cool. Yep.
Lefties, Muse. That's where I played with them, was at Lefties and Muse. And I think they played Woolies once or twice.
Cool.
Can't remember, but
That's awesome.
yeah, they're pretty good. I'm pretty lucky that I got to get in and play with them. I responded to a Craigslist ad looking for a guitar player, and I was like, sure, I'll try this out.
Uh-huh.
And I went in, and I saw Mark's drum kit, 2 kicks, 2 snares, 2 hi-hats, 12 toms, 11 cymbals. I was like, oh, I'm not gonna see these guys after tonight. And they're like, oh, just play something, play anything. And so I pulled out this like old, what I think is kind of a tacky riff, but mostly just because I've been playing it since I was a kid, and I played it, and for some god awful reason they liked it, and then that became our first song.
Oh, cool. That's pretty awesome.
Yeah.
That's awesome when it's just like play us a riff, and then it's just like, well, we're gonna turn this into music, kid. Like,
Yep.
buckle up.
That was basically it too. I didn't really know what I got myself into with it, but I'm super lucky. These guys have been doing music for a long, long time, and I feel like their abilities and talents are way above mine. And I'm just like, I am so lucky that these guys decided to take this poor short little band under their wing and say, hello, Toast, we're going to take care of you. I was like, okay.
You say Toast?
Yeah, they call me Toast.
Toast.
I know.
All right.
Shoot. Well, now everyone else is going to call me Toast, too.
Yeah, everyone's going to start calling you Toast from now on.
Toast.
So you play the solo stuff, but it's not going to be like what you play with the band.
No. It's very much like, hey, that song Bound to the Floor by Local H? Here's my rendition of it with live looping.
Okay, I got you.
Or like, here's Closing Time, or here's Taylor Swift, or something.
Okay, yeah, I get. That's actually pretty cool.
Yeah.
Like, you just pulling your own renditions off of it using whatever you have at your disposal. It's also pretty awesome that you're just like, I'm going to use what talents I have with guitar and or cajones, and then just utilize my engineering prowess to make this sound a certain way as well.
That's about it. Here's my secret, people. I am compensating for a lack of musical talent with my engineering skills.
And you said that before, but like in a roundabout way, that's kind of how I felt. Like you and I haven't discussed this. I've talked about it earlier on another podcast, but I played a show where it was just like I had to play an acoustic set for, well, it wasn't even supposed to be just acoustic, but it was just like play a set for a wine walk, so it can't be anything profane. It's got to be palatable to general public. So I was just like, I can play acoustic stuff, I can play blues stuff, I can, and then I was just like, what, why don't I just put an A-B in here and throw it in there, and I got acoustic electric. Then I got to send it all through the looper, and I can layer like solos in here and loop like intros to solos and play that stuff. And so I started doing like a little bit of that, and I pulled it off pretty well, but it was also one of those things, like you said, like some people have the ability to just sit there with an acoustic guitar and a microphone, and it sounds amazing. Yeah. I don't have the...
Or just an acoustic guitar like Andy McKee or Craig D'Andrea.
I don't have the ability to just sit and do that, though. Like, so I had to like just start adding other things in there where it's like, well, here's a couple tricks then that you might not see everywhere. And some people were just like wowed by the whole thing, but other people had seen stuff like that before and were just like crazed out by it. But like, I don't know. Like I did simple stuff, like I just recorded like a simple chord progression, like finger picking some nonsense, and I just put it on a loop and just turned it down really low. So that was like the intro music before I was playing. Like everybody just like walked into the thing, on the wine walk, and it was just like, oh, there's nice music playing and it's ambient and whatever. It's like, oh, I made that in like 10 seconds, Like,
yeah. I think part of it is I'm too ADD to really sit down and actually learn how to play an instrument for real. Like my band bought me the Guitar Grimoire book 2 years ago.
Okay.
And they've been like harassing me to actually sit down and learn how to play and become a musician. And I'm like, nah, man.
Yeah.
So, and I think part of why I have all these different elements in my setup is I kind of need the variety to keep myself engaged too. So, I'll like toss something down on an acoustic and loop it, and then I'll do a shaker, and then, I'll loop that, then I'll do some like congas, add some cajon to it, and then, add some bass line and like piano or whatever, and just start to build it up, because I think, I don't know, I think I'm just bored.
Yeah. I mean, I get there too, where it's just like I kind of, like you said, ADD. I just like to learn things. I'm kind of like a busy person right now, so thank you for first off, thank you for making the time. Like,
thank you. I have to go up to Boone after this.
Like we're recording this on like a mid-afternoon on a weekday.
In my control room.
Yeah, it's like
Control room, air quotes.
it's like the best time we could find. But I'm glad we did find some time. But
Me too.
I get what you're saying. It's just like if you get super busy and you just you like to stay busy doing things. So sometimes you just do something to the best of your ability, like get most of the juice out of one squeeze and go to the next thing. You know.
I like that analogy.
It's one I've been using a lot lately because like somebody had said, I don't remember where I heard it, but it's like if you can get 80% of the juice out in the first squeeze and it takes like 20% of the work, then are you willing to work the other 80% to get that last 20% of juice? Then you have to like weigh your options. Is it
Kind
worth
of.
like
Is it worth the diminished return?
Yeah, exactly. I'm willing to do it, but at the same time, is it worth the diminished return? So then I usually just go to something else. So
Yeah, I think that's kind of where I've been approaching that type of point, even in my mixing too. You know, is like, okay, because, and I know I just recorded your band, and I feel kind of weird to talk about this with someone that I've recorded.
let's go for it.
More than I feel awkward about it in general, but you know, when it boils down to it, you know, recording is a business. You know, equipment costs money, time is money, and stuff. And so when I'm doing a live record for, you know, a flat amount of money, and say, okay, I'm doing this record for this amount, you know, it kind of gets to a point where it's like, well, then how much time am I really spending on this, and what is this actually coming down to on a return side? You know, if I'm spending,
You have to budget your time.
right, if I'm spending 80 hours on this record, you know, or 100 hours, then, you know, what is that boiling down to? Is that boiling down to $5 an hour, you know,
Yeah,
or
exactly.
something? And so,
Or even not. Like, are you going to spend, if you're going to spend 80 hours totally mixing and doing all the stuff, all the work for this, do you want to spend 40 of those, like, mixing one track's guitar thing, and then you're just like, oh, now I have to cut, you know,
right,
the
something
mixing time
else,
out of
and
something else. And
that was trying to figure out my workflow. I think has been the most important part of what I've been doing, and I'm still trying to figure out. I'm sure I will be trying to figure it out for years to come, and modifying it, trying to make it a bit better. And I think that's just kind of a normal engineering type of a thing. I know when I did the Stress Fine last year, I think in total with all the mixing and stuff, and I think that one song took over 2 months.
oh, geez.
But I mean, I was very happy with the result. But when I went into it, I didn't really know what direction it was going to go. I'd never done that type of music, and so as I've gone and recorded different styles and genres, even some of my own stuff, I've been able, you know, to figure out, well, what is my approach to mixing going to be in the first place? Which for me is, you know, I'm not going to try and make something sound like something that it's not. So I'm going to say, okay, this is a cajon. What is this cajon trying to sound like? And then how can I make it best sound like that? And then just do it, you know? And the same thing with a snare or a tom or a guitar or a voice or something, you know, and try to mix each element to sound as good as it can on its own, and then blend those together in a mix and say, well, you know, like, how are these frequencies going to sit and Tetris together here and stuff? And that's kind of helped me to become a little more streamlined in my process, you know, kind of make better use of my time with it. So, because there's two sides to mixing. There's the technical side of like, okay, well, how am I going to do this channel routing in the buses, and
Yeah.
you know, and the initial EQing of like, okay, you know, like, where's this high pass going to be? Where's this boost or cut or whatever it's going to be? And then there's the creative side of okay, how do we make all of these elements in the mix sit together properly? How do I create some like emotion and movement in this mix, so it's not just so blah and static and boring? I'm not saying that, you know, your music is boring. It's just one of
No,
those where it's like,
I get what you're saying.
yeah, because like you kind of want a song to be catchy and engaging, and I think part of that can be as simple as, well, let's just do like a 3 decibel boost on the drums at the start of the chorus, and then kind of like taper it off a bit so it hits in and drops off, and it's not just like the same, like, okay, here's the level.
Yeah.
You know, and so that's the creative side that I really enjoy doing. So trying to streamline the technical side of it, you know, with that approach of, I'm just going to make each element sound like what it's trying to sound like, you know, then just do that and go with it. I've been able to, you know, that's that single that I did last year that took, you know, 2 months, as opposed to the Sleepovers record, which I think start to finish took 5 weeks.
Nice.
and that was it.
Yeah, so you've been able to streamline your process quite a bit.
Right, and I think that's really good too, because I think when it comes to mixing, there's a certain point where like you said, the diminishing like returns of like you're gonna, like you're going to sit there for 8 hours and accomplish nothing. Because like this is already sounding about as good as it can. So how about I just put it away and come back to it in a week and see if it's good, and if it is, then cool, I'll send it off, and if not, then I'll make a couple of changes, and then I'll call it good or something. So.
Yeah. So how does all this translate as far as like doing sound in a controlled environment, like wherever you depends on where you're recording stuff, whether or not it be in like this room and isolated rooms, and like you ever gone over to somebody else's place, I'm sure, and recorded some stuff at their place or whatever. But how does all that translate to going somewhere live? Because you do live sound at Vaudeville.
Yep.
So how does it translate like all of this to all of that? Like because it's harder to have
man,
it's harder to have
question.
It's harder to have all of this, like the thought process, like what are they trying to sound like? What is this band going for? Like, blah 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 blah. It's harder to do all that, I'm sure, on the fly with each and every band live.
Actually, I find it easier.
Easier?
But so I'm sure some engineer out there listening to me is going to be screaming his head off and just having a vein pulsing out of the side of his neck when he hears me say this. But when I'm live, I give like 2 fucks, as opposed to when I'm in a studio, I give like all the fucks. And part of that is, I'm sorry if I'm not allowed to say that.
No, you say whatever you want.
Okay, good. Okay. Jesus Christ. If you're listening, Jesus, I don't care. When I'm in the studio, in the studio, I don't even want to call this a studio. It's just, I just record music and I happen to have a mix room here. But when I'm like doing on like a studio type of a side, it's much more microscopic. You're trying to figure out exactly how specifically is this element trying to sound. Whereas when you're doing it like at a show and live, you're kind of mixing to the room.
Yeah.
And so it's kind of like, okay, let's just make this tom sound good in this room. Let's make the snare sound good in this room. Let's make the kick sound good in this room. What I tend to do is I'll do like a line check before the band plays, but most of my mixing that I'm going to do before band plays is in the monitors.
Yeah.
Because I want to make sure that a band is able to hear themselves as well as they can, because when you're on stage and you're playing, how are you going to do good on stage if you can't hear what's going on stage? So I want to make sure that the band is as confident as they can be on stage with what they're hearing back. And then during the first song, of the set, or the first half of a song, I'm going to do the main bulk of my mixing, and that's just kind of a matter of, okay, so let's say this kick is trying to do some slap at like 3,000 hertz or 4,000 hertz. Cool, let's just put that in there, and just kind of dial that in really quick. Because when you're live, a room is very forgiving, and the layperson's ears aren't really going to be able to tell much of a difference unless it just sounds like horse shit.
Yeah.
And my thing about that is like, when I'm mixing live, I definitely want to create an experience for the crowd. Now, again, I'm talking about mixing at Vaudeville Muse, not mixing at Woolies or Wells Fargo.
Yeah, exactly.
I mean, that would be way different, and I would definitely take that much more seriously. And I do take my mixing very seriously. But when I am mixing a band live, I want it to just be more of creating an experience, of like, okay, so the levels are good.
Yes.
If the levels in the house are good, then I'll do a little bit of EQ tweaking, but that's about it. Because, it's kind of whatever. People are more... I tend to see people more engaged in the band's performance than in how they actually sound.
Yes, I can definitely say that. Like full force of the band is even semi-engaging. It's definitely more entertaining, and
right.
I'm not really keying in 100% on how they sound.
Mm-hmm.
But like, let me ask you this: you're at depends on where you go, and I'm not like crapping on anybody's sound system places, but everybody's sound system's different. Some people just have like a tiny mixer and powered speakers. Some people have like an amp that's like 9,000 years old and never gets shut off, and it's kind of junky. And some, like, whatever it happens to be, wherever you happen to be doing the mixing. you're also like not only at the whim of the equipment of the place that you have to go to, so you have to like get used to that, but like you're at the whim of everybody that shows up with whatever rig they have. And you could have somebody that's just like, I'm gonna crank it up to 10 because fuck it, and then you could have somebody else that in the band that's just like, mine's only cranked up to 2 and it's way quieter, and you have to like find a way to make that parity meet up. I'm sure you run into issues where it's like, hey, can I have you turn your amp down a little bit, and people kind of get huffy about it, or
I've never had someone get huffy, mostly because what I've found is some engineers are. I have to be very careful with my verbiage with this because I am an engineer and I definitely do have some of these traits myself. But, as an engineer, you're going in to mix a band and you have an idea of what you want it to sound like. But I feel like when you're mixing live and working with a band, you have to have customer service skills.
yes,
You have to be able to work with people. And I'm not saying I'm the best at it by any means.
well,
But to me, I want to make sure that the band, the artist is having the best experience that they can, because that's going to help their performance be much more crisp on stage, which people are going to pick up on and enjoy. But likewise, I've definitely had times where a band's amp is just way too loud, and I'm like, hey, I am so sorry to ask this, but is there any way we can turn it down just,
yeah, because like it's messing with the way it's coming into your mixing board, and you can't mix it to make it sound
or
good
not
enough
even
for
that, it could just be like, like this twin reverb is very loud. Is there any way that we can turn it down at all? If not, that's okay, but it is kind of overpowering the mains because our mains aren't very hot. And usually there's no problem. I think I've only ever had one time where a band was like, okay, if that's what you want. Then,
yeah, it totally makes sense.
And
maybe some of that's their live appeal because they want to.
I've actually had more times where I've had to ask someone to turn their amp up because I was like, I'm trying to boost the gain on this mic, but I need your amp a little bit louder if possible.
Yep.
Because
I totally get that. Like, I mean, here's another one. This is like a question I'm going to ask because I just feel like asking it. So feel free to dodge it or dart around it. But like, what about people with? I don't even want to say. What about people with junky tone? Like it's. I know there's probably a lot of difficulty with that.
I've had my fair share of junky tone.
And I'm talking about, if people don't know what junky tone is, I'm talking about
like your amp sounds like cats in a blender, and it makes you want to rip your head off because it literally hurts your ears to listen to.
Yeah, like can of bees was another one I've heard a lot of people say. Like it just sounds like a can of bees. But buzzsaw is another one I've heard. But
my thing is, I'm kind of just gonna work with whatever band gives me.
Yeah.
But at the same time, if something is like, say these two amps just their tones just are not matching up at all, depends on the band. If it's a band that's been around for a long time, they're doing what they're doing.
Exactly.
And I'm gonna work with that.
Yep.
And I might EQ it in the house a bit to try to blend. But if it's kind of a newer band, it's a group of kids and they're coming in, they're playing, and you can tell, they don't have the best equipment, I might, then I might approach it like, hey, I've noticed that your guitar sounds, is good, and your tone is good, but they don't quite like match. Can I make a suggestion to make that match? And usually it's like, yeah, sure. And so I'll kind of, help them to blend those a little bit more. But I mean, again, if it's live, to me, it's more about the performance and the experience than it is about the sound.
Yeah, and that's another thing is depends on and then a lot of that probably depends on the band or like the place you're playing, because like we're talking like from where I'm up from, there's like lots of vineyard shows and stuff like that, and those aren't going to depend on the performance as much as they are like everybody playing as well as they can.
Right,
sound,
right.
Because there's not going to be people like headbanging at a
vineyard. Right.
But yeah, I totally get what you're saying. Like playing at clubs, like Three Finger Betty does. Performance has a lot to do with it, whether or not you've got energy.
Oh, absolutely.
You don't got to go nuts, but you still have to be like at least invoking the crowd somehow to have a good time and move around with you. Because if you don't look like you're having fun, then nobody really cares.
Exactly.
And some of that comes down to types of bands that you have. Like blending two guitar tones is something that I've done a lot of tinkering with over the years. Where like, I always feel like John and I have two completely different soundscapes with the amps that we use.
You do.
And
but they complement each other.
Yeah, so like that's what I tried to find was something that would like fit one another. Where like, okay, so I wanted to get like a metal-ish kind of a sound coming out of my guitar, but I don't want to have it so like mid-scooped and grindy,
right?
Like, that it would be like off-putting compared to John's like
But just kind
somewhere
of like a
between,
smooth, like,
Yeah.
distortion.
Yeah, so I
Yeah.
wanted the other end of that was I wanted to have like a slightly heavier bottom end on my sound because John's didn't have that, so it would be easier to distinguish between the two of us.
Mm-hmm.
And then if we're playing matching chords, it would sound more full because more
Right.
sonic room would be taken up.
Definitely.
So like those were like the two things I went after, which kind of aren't necessarily complementary to one another because if you think like metal sound, it's like, oh, you don't want to muddy up the bottom end, you want to make it as tight as possible.
Right.
Which those are like, that's kind of like where I came into my thought process between like where I wanted my sound to come in. And I think we've done a pretty good job of having the two of us play together. If you compare what I'm hearing here, at least before the podcast, compared to the demo that they had done 2 years ago, three years ago they did, there's definitely an added element that's different, which is not just the longevity of them playing together, but it's also the addition of another guitar, which like, oh, this is hitting a whole new sonic region than just like one guitar.
Right. Yeah, two guitars as opposed to one guitar. Like the sleepover just has one guitar. And so the challenge with that was, okay, I recorded the amp live and I recorded the direct off the guitar, and then I'm going to, pan the live amp left and a reamp on the right or something.
Oh, cool.
And then I can just have like just the left channel come in at the start of a song, and then the right hits in with the drums or whatever else. Whereas opposed to like your stuff, it tends to be more like, okay, so they're both coming in on the same chord, so they're just gonna hit like left and right or something.
Yep.
It's definitely on the mixing side of recording. It's definitely quite a bit different when you're working with one guitar or two guitars. But I mean, when it comes to live, stuff, especially in a smaller room like at Lefties or at Vaudeville Muse or I don't know where else people play, the Fremont or whatever,
Yeah.
then you kind of have to create the separation with your amps being on either sides of this stage as opposed to just trying to all pipe it all like mono in the system.
Yeah. And so that was another one. Like we'd go to a lot of places and play where there's no in-house sound engineer. Like you have to do all your own sound stuff. And whether or not you want to set it, like at Fremont, there's no sound guy. You have to do it all yourself.
They should hire me.
Hit them up. No, but it's literally a very basic setup. It's a very small room. You can get away with trying your best to just send the vocals through the PA system and call it good enough.
Right.
Boggs is another place like that. Boggs Hole Avenue. They don't have a sound guy, but they have sound equipment. And if you really want to, there may be enough room and enough stuff to mic up all your stuff and send it through their sound system. But then again, like how much stuff do you want to drag out and do? So a lot of times there we just send the PA as the mics, and everybody else just hopes and prays with their soundscape that it works. Which is tough because if you're sitting on the left side, you're obviously going to hear like mostly one guitar, and if you're sitting on the right side, vice versa.
Yeah.
So you run into that issue. We used to drag an extra cab with us and flip flop. We'd split it in two. It was a 4x12, and then I would take the opposite side, and John would take the other opposite side. So we had like another cab in the middle that was kind of splitting the sound
To fill up the
to
space.
fill up the space. So if you were on John's side, you would still hear a little bit of what I had going on, and vice versa. But I don't know. That required too much gear and dragging stuff around. I got tired of doing it.
Yeah, there's a whole interesting like world of theory behind, like working with small PA systems and like trying to balance the room itself.
Yep.
All together. Like, okay, so what is the loudest element in this room? Well, obviously it's the cymbals. I don't know. We can push everything up to that. So what's the second loudest? Well, it's the snare. Okay, so let's blend everything to to that. Well, the PA can't quite go that loud. Well, what can we do with our cabs or whatever else? And then what can we do to the PA, and stuff like that, and how to create a sound experience in a room with a lackluster PA system is. I would geek out and have so much fun doing that if I had the time. I think if I had just hours and hours to sit down with a band in a room like that and just be like, okay, so let's just try putting this here or here, and see how it sounds out through the whole like room. I think that'd be so fun. But there's also bands that have recorded that way,
Yep.
where they put like one mic somewhere in the room and then move everything around that mic and just record to that one, and it sounds crazy good.
Yeah, I mean, and that's like you said, that's a possibility. Like, there's a ton of fun ways you can go about doing it.
I'm just not that good.
Believe it or not, bringing one of these digital recorders that has a line, it's got microphones on it. And you can open it up and say like, how loud is this room at the current moment, and set up a level to match everything to, and exactly like you said, matching to the snare and the cymbals is usually where you have to find, everybody has to bring up to that level to an extent to match what's going on there. Otherwise, they're just going to drown everything out.
Oh, and then there's also, the concept of like sonic pressure, like cymbals are very loud, and if you have a drummer who's kind of a cymbal monkey, then, if you're trying to crank all the amps and cabs and PA up to that point, you're actually going to physically hurt people who are trying to listen to
Bingo.
it. So, there's a lot of different factors that go into it. I think as much as people tend to hate drum shields and enclosures, I think for smaller places like that, I think it could be very kind of beneficial to kind of cut down on some of that echo off of the cymbals.
Yes.
But then you also have to compensate for the toms and the kicks,
Yeah.
So it's interesting.
That's really crazy. Like, and that's what, one of those things where our band is lucky enough to have like a bassist. Jeff likes to just tinker with that stuff, and I do too, but I don't have the energy to do it.
Yeah, he brought all kinds of stuff over when you
Yeah,
guys
he
were
just brought
recording.
like a bag of stuff, and it
was
was
like,
just like, oh, I got some DI boxes. I brought headphones, and he just like had like a little bit of everything. Like, you need speaker cables.
Oh
like,
my gosh,
it's like
that one made me laugh too, because I was like, I don't think we're gonna need speaker cables.
it's just, but he's like the Boy Scout. He's always prepared. Like, one day I was having trouble hooking up my rig, and I'm like, I don't know what's going on. He's like, I got a cable tester, and he's got this like cable tester, and it's like, why do you have that? But at the same rate, like, I'm glad you did, because we figured out one cable sucks, and we chucked it and got a new one in there.
I actually don't have a cable tester. If anybody out there would like to buy me a cable tester, I'd be very happy.
Venmo me money at.
I don't even know my Venmo.
I don't. That should have. Damn it. Could have worked. No. But there's like some actually pretty cheap cable testers on Amazon.
Oh,
it's
yeah,
just like, wow, I can't believe how well this works.
Oh, I can definitely, afford to get one. It just kind of boils down to, am I going to buy a cable tester, or, ooh, look at this weird little percussion thing at Guitar Center. I'm going to buy this instead.
Oh, I found something on Amazon Market or on Facebook Marketplace. That,
this is cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I'm guilty of that too, though. Like, all the gear I've hunted down has been, I would have to say like 80% of it was below what everybody would have priced it at, and you find a way to get it for a little bit of a deal, et cetera, et cetera.
Have you ever found a free piece of gear?
Let me see. I'm trying to think. No, I don't think I have.
Okay. So Facebook, or not Facebook, Craigslist free section. I'm one of those people that checks the free section on Craigslist at least every couple of days, because you'll occasionally find mostly junk, but sometimes something that's okay,
Yep.
I'm so mad that I didn't see it yesterday, but somebody had just a PV guitar or bass amp on their curb.
Yep.
And I was like, well, dang it, it rained, and it's all going to be like ruined now.
Yep.
But I found a little Fender amp, just a tiny practice amp, in a dumpster.
Oh, man.
It was literally in a dumpster, covered in, I don't even want to tell you what it was covered in, but I took it home and cleaned it up and tried it, and I was like, it's perfect.
Yeah.
So I used it for the longest time, and then eventually I sold it.
That's funny. I did a little bit of wheeling and dealing where you'd buy stuff for like a little bit cheaper, get a bundle of stuff, and then sell it off piece by piece, and it's whatever. You always end up with too much gear sitting in boxes and places.
Always.
But it is kind of fun to hunt that stuff down. I always liked going there and finding stuff, especially like new musicians. I spent a lot of time, like I did lessons and stuff like that, and I was just trying to encourage people to play the guitar that want to. And I want to buy this guitar. It's like, well, it's like $500. You could find one that's just as good for like $200 used. And then it's just like, well, look at this guy. He's got one that's a little bit not that awesome. And based on the fact you want this to be your first guitar, like you could get away with spending like $100 or less. And you find something that's good for them, that's used, that's not a first act guitar from Walmart, that's a piece of junk or whatever.
Or you could just be the sleaziest capitalist ever and just go get it and then upsell it to them.
Oh, no. Well, that's the thing, like with everybody I've ever done lessons to or tried to help with that stuff, it's just like, I'm going to try and do my best, by you to help you find something you want to find and not take
right.
it. Yep. But, I have bought stuff and then played with it for like a year or two and then just went and sold it off. It's not unheard of, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But you know, and that's some of the thing about like you got to know the market out there too. And it's weird how much if you watch it for a few years, it's like, oh man, everything fluctuated for a while. You couldn't get rid of one of these things for $400, and now it's 6 or 7 is the absolute lowest you will ever find one for.
Yeah, and people
like,
are just buying them up like crazy, and
just,
it's interesting for sure.
Whether or not it's a guitar,
like cabs especially, like nobody's buying the 4x12 cabs anymore.
No.
So like you can buy a 4x12 used for about the price of a 2x12 used, because people are just dumping them. They're not like using them.
Yeah, we're talking nice ones, because I was gonna say if you go to like get I'm talking just like a run of the mill PV cab, you know maybe $200 tops, you know.
Right.
But if you want a 2x12, that's decent, $300-400. It's weird because like some places brand new, the 2x12s are more than the 4x12s, and it's like, how does that work out?
Well, and part of that is just, you know, it's kind of the market and the fluctuation of where
Bingo.
people aren't really buying the 4x12s. I don't want to buy a 4x12 because I don't want to haul it around.
That is my biggest problem right now. I'm tired of dragging 4x12s places, and that's like. I'm
And
trying to find a way to get around it because
I think that's a huge part of why people are buying, you know, the Helixes and the Kempers and the Axe Effects and stuff like that, is because you can put it in a rack and take that, and you don't have to have an amp or a cab.
Yep, and you just plug it straight into the DI, and away it goes. Which I absolutely love that. It's worth the extraordinarily nominal loss of sound that you're going to have from having a digital rig, because it's like the premier digital rig to have, pretty much.
Now, I'm not going to buy a digital rig, because why would I want to spend money on it? I have an orange TH30. Is it up there? It is up there.
There is an orange
I love
TH30.
my TH30. It is, hands down, in my opinion, the most versatile tube amp I've ever played, and I absolutely adore it.
Nice. That's a
But
good
at the
endorsement.
same time, I've heard some Kempers that sound great. Like back in April, I had the opportunity to record Memphis Mayfire live at the Muse, and it's just one of those projects that I'm just kind of like mixing on here and there. They're not paying me. I don't even know if they'll let me like use their stuff in my portfolio, but they used these Kempers, and it turned out great. I mean, the guitars, they sounds like a cab. It's like, this is fantastic.
It's wild. Yeah. Like you can get down to like the point where you can simulate whatever cab you want or whatever amp you want.
Whatever amp and pedals into whatever cab with whatever speaker with whatever mic.
Yeah, and I mean, I've got an Avid 11 rack, which is like a poor man's Kemper type deal.
Yeah.
And it's like the same deal, but it's kind of wild how you can just like plug and play all that stuff in there and be like, this sounds pretty darn good.
Or even like the people who just have like Amplitude on their tablet or something. They just have like an iRig and they plug it into that
it's so mind blowing how cool you can do that like nowadays
with a phone.
or like an iPad or anything. But it's just like, 10-15 years ago, and it's not even a possibility.
No, right. It's so wild. It's like, wait, I don't even need an amp. This is great.
Yeah, it's pretty wild.
Just stick a wah pedal in front of it and call it good.
Exactly. If anybody wants to check those things out, like just any sort of a digital, like Kemper's the one that I've seen everybody's been going nuts
Kemper, Line 6 Helix.
Yeah.
I know TC Electronic is in the process of making a multi-effects pedal. I'm not sure if it's just going to be all of their effects in one pedal, or if it's going to try to go after the Helix and Kemper type of market. And then there's, the Axe Effects, and I don't even know like what else there is. A buddy of mine still has a Pod HD 500X.
Pods were big for a while.
And they're still great. They still sound great,
Yeah, the digital market's come a long ways.
It really has.
It's pretty fun to think about that kind of stuff as far
Let's
as like
just bring back the
soundscaping.
days of like the Digitech RP80. Yeah, that sounds like shit. Let's go for it,
why not,
Oh my gosh.
Yeah, my favorite was figuring out how to run those one of those properly, because I was like, how come every time I use one of these it sounds like crap? And it's like, because you're not doing anything right with it. So.
Yeah, that's the digital modeling. I mean, the most modeling that I'll do, because I'm doing the recording stuff, is I'm a huge fan of Joey Sturgis's plugins.
Okay.
I'm gonna come out and say I'm not a fan of Joey Sturgis as a person. I think he's kind of a douche. He's like, my mixes are great. It's like, yeah, I listen to your mixes. I'm not a fan, but his plugins are phenomenal. The bus glues are great. Some of his limiter, the finality, is my favorite. I am actually using that on your guys' drums.
Nice.
But his amp simulators, I think, are great. The Tone Forge stuff. The Ben Bruce Tone Forge plugin, I think personally, is my favorite because I can do clean for like country type of a sound, all the way up to like just a ridiculous searing overdrive.
Yeah.
And then if you're getting into like the gent stuff, then you can go a bit
Yeah.
heavier with like the Jason Richardson or the Misha Mansour.
Yeah.
I'm pronouncing these wrong, I'm sure, but it's pretty cool. And what I like to do with those is I'll blend that with a live amp,
Okay.
to keep the characteristic of the live amp, but kind of blend in something extra to fill in the gaps a bit. 'Cause
Gaps being left.
as
by that.
unfortunate of reality as it is, the recording and production stuff has come a long way since Queen.
Yeah. Yep.
Like their stuff sounded phenomenal, but it boiled down to you have a live amp
Yep.
and live drums and a live vocal, and there's not much being done to it.
Yep.
Whereas today it's like, oh, people are quad tracking their guitars,
Yeah, yep.
and okay, well here's the drums.
Which
now
that sounds great though. Quad tracking
oh
sounds great.
yeah,
so.
yeah. But then people are like, okay, here's a live drum kit. We're gonna blend some samples in with it, and we're going to take those and bust them out to like a fuzz pedal and record that back in and blend it. So on each drum element, you have like 3 or 4 different tracks that you're blending together and stuff, and it kind of creates kind of like a wall of sound,
Yeah.
and it's a lot different. So with being able to blend a live amp with an amp simulator, I think is great. But yeah,
Definitely. So I think we've covered like mostly.
Have we?
Most of what we've.
I think so.
Because speed of sound.
Yep. So my business is called Speed of Sound.
Oh.
It is actually a nod to a shop in my hometown.
Oh, nice.
Called Speed of Sound. It's kind of, they more specialize in like amplifiers and repair and stuff like that. But like you can go in there and pick some stuff up or whatever. I used to go in there a lot as a kid. And so I initially called my business that as a nod to that shop and as a nod to my hometown.
That's awesome.
Before I realized, wow, that might have actually been a bad thing to do.
Yeah.
But, I mean, whatever. I was able to get the LLC for it.
That's cool. So you got Speed of Sound Studios. Is that what you call it? Just Speed of Sound?
Just Speed of Sound. I'm in the process of trying to think of a name for the studio side because Speed of Sound in general, I do the studio side mostly in the recordings and stuff like that. But I also partner with a couple different companies. Ragnarok Cabs out of
Nice.
Cedar Rapids.
Cool.
You can buy his cabs on my website. What else? Trace Audio out of LA, I think is where he is. He does a lot of like custom cabling and equipment. You can buy like the Neve preamps through him and stuff like that.
Oh, cool.
And, kind of have like links to some of his stuff. I actually build some custom pedal boards out of old suitcases.
Oh, cool. Cool.
On occasion, so people can order those through my website, speedofsoundia.com.
All right.
But so I'm trying to think of a name for this for the studio side. It's just not very high on the priority list.
Yeah, I gotcha. All right, so we talked about that. We let's give another shout out to the band, though.
Yeah, the band. Wait, what band?
Your band.
Oh, my band.
Your band.
I was like,
Not
wait.
my band. Yeah, let's talk about Three Finger Betty more. Talk me up. Tell me how cool I am.
I was like, the band,
Dude,
Elwood.
Dude, we're so
the
good.
Band.
We're so good.
Right.
All right.
I was kidding. Well, my band is called Aren't We All?
Yep.
We're kind of Tool inspired. My solo project is called The Somewhat.
The Somewhat.
Mm-hmm. And then I have a side project with Ben Barker, great drummer.
All right.
He plays in Eggs Per Minute, Meth May Be an Orphan, and Ruby Rocket and the Locomotive Wonder Kid.
Okay.
He's actually a classically trained percussionist.
Oh, that's awesome.
He has a degree in percussion.
That's wild.
And he's actually my in-house percussionist. So if you're looking to record a song and you want to come in and you're like, I just need some help like writing a different type of percussion part, you can,
awesome.
I'll call him up and bring him in. Yeah, we have a side project called B Squared.
Okay, that's cool.
Where we just record acoustic covers of punk songs
All right.
Just specifically just like recording. We don't perform.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
And you do live mixing at Vaudeville?
I do some live mixing at Vaudeville Muse on occasion. I do some booking at Lefty's Live Music.
Cool. That's awesome. So you're a busy guy.
Yeah.
Yeah. You got your fingers on the pulse of the music scene in the Des Moines area for sure.
Trying to. I've been in Des Moines for 3.5 years, so I'm trying to get my finger on the pulse of it.
Yeah. Well, I think you're doing a great job.
Oh, thanks.
I just want to say thanks, for once again making time to sit down with me, recording the Three Finger Betty stuff, making it a very easy and pain-free environment to sit down and record.
I appreciate it.
I mean, like, I got a headache on that day, and I'm not someone that gets headaches, so it was just like a weird, like, rare thing where it's like, my head is going to explode, and I cannot figure out what's going on. And, you were very inviting and weren't really, you didn't make me feel like I had to sit there and do stuff and be a certain place, and because, people with headaches get aggravated. And I was easily aggravated that day. I just wanted to sit outside until it's just like, just tell me when it's time to play, and I'll come in and play. So you made it very easy for me and everybody else involved.
Well, I think that recording should be fun.
Yeah, definitely.
So, yeah.
Well, I appreciate you sitting down and doing a podcast with me, man.
Well, thanks for having me on your podcast.
Absolutely. We'll do another one sometime when you get some more bands under your belt and talk about what else you got going on, man.
Send some bands my way.
All right, we'll do it. That's what we're trying to do with the podcast here.
Sounds
so we'll share
great.
It away. All right, man.
All right.
Thanks.
Thank you.
Hey, that was a great one. Sitting down talking to Ben. He seems so knowledgeable. He's just nice. I guess just really nice guy. It's not like there's not any nice guys out there, but dang, he's just easy to talk to. You just spin ideas off of him, and he spins his ideas back on you, and that's what that's all I'm looking for really here in these podcasts, is just having a conversation with people. And I think I had a great one there with Ben. You can check all of his links out down below. I've got links to his bands and his recording studio. I guess I don't know if it's a studio, but his recording engineer, where you can contact him and check out his stuff. He's got it there. I've got it down below. So check out all his stuff down below. And while you're scrolling around down below, don't forget to check out Couchtown Coffee. This week, you can save 20% because Couchtown's that awesome. Just make sure you enter the code word SOUND. And if you're one of the first 5 orders this week, you will also get an Audible Farm podcast sticker. So make sure you use that promo code. You got to use the promo code to get the sticker. So use that promo code, save 20%, and get yourself a free Audible Farm podcast sticker. That's a nice way of us to say thank you for supporting us for the last year. So I really appreciate it. And hey, ringing in the new year, I've got some ideas brewing up here. I have a Facebook group that I've started for anybody that wants to dump any of their band's links to events pages and other stuff they have coming up. I know there's a bunch of groups already set for that, but the thing that makes my group a little bit different is if you put Facebook event links in there, I may make a little schedule or a calendar, or at least mention them on the podcast. I might even make like a Friday show that's just me listing shows that are going on in certain areas or something. I don't know. I've got big plans, but I'm not quite sure where to take it. If you guys got any input on the situation, drop it in a comment section down below. Wherever you're listening, go to Facebook. Find anything Audible Farm at www.audiblefarm.com. Make sure you like, subscribe, and share. Tell everyone about the podcast. I've got tons of stickers, everybody. So if this promo deal goes over really fast and all them stickers get snatched up, maybe I'll run another little promo with Audible Farm here and Couchtown Coffee coming up soon. So make sure you save 20% by entering the code word SOUND, because I'll tell you what, the guy that's running the sound for Three Finger Betty's new album that's coming up is Ben Hall, and he joined me today, and I am super glad that we got to sit down and talk, because he's doing an amazing job so far, keeping us updated with little tidbits of things that he fixes here and there and does this and that, and he did a really good job preserving the sound and energy that Three Finger Betty has live, because that is our, I don't know, I think that's where we belong, is in a live setting, just punching people in the face with music, and that's what he somehow had the ability to capture that on a recording session. So thanks, Ben. I am looking forward to how these tracks turn out when they are fully completed. So this is going to be a good one. I can't wait. Check out all of Ben's stuff down below. Check out couchtowncoffee.com. Check out audiblefarm.com. Make sure you also check out iowapodcastnetwork.com. I haven't mentioned them in a while, but they're still kicking, and they are one of the reasons that we are doing this too, because I love being part of teams of things. So appreciate it. Thanks for listening, everybody. We'll check you next week. Later.